Welcome everyone to Rolling Out the Toolkit for College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education. We are so glad that you are here today to join us. Today I have with me Bonnie Bootman and Susan Pittman-Shelter, and we are going to be going over some tools that you can use as you implement your college and career readiness standards for adult education. At this point, I'd like to really take an opportunity to thank our director, Zelda Rogers, and her staff from the Florida Department of Education, and also the other CCRS trainers, Carolyn Allen, Lynn Ralston, Judy Johnson, Maria Gutierrez, Roxana Hurtado, and of course, Bonnie and Susan. Let me walk you through a few of the objectives of what we're going to accomplish today in our webinar. You have, we're going to introduce you to or reacquaint you with the College and the Career Readiness Standards for AD. This is a project which we are in the first year of this project for the integration and implementation of Florida's College and Career Readiness. We are going to also take you on a virtual tour of.
So he'll be in school for how long? Oh gosh, at least 2 years, I think.
We are going to also let you dive into some lesson plans. These are lesson plans that have been crafted specifically for ABE and concentrating on the ELA standards. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to tell you about some upcoming resources and some PD online learning that you can do. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleagues, Bonnie and Susan, and we are going to get underway.
Thanks, June. For those of you who don't recognize us, of course, I've got Susan with me, myself, and the cute little girl with the puzzled look on her face is June. Not because she's puzzled today, but because June wasn't able to provide us with a picture. So, you had to find something that was just absolutely adorable. So that's who we are. But Susan, how about if we figure out who the audience is today?
That sounds great. And in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to get started by taking a poll. And those of you who were with us for the last webinar, you had an opportunity to do this as well. So we're not going to give you a lot of time in order to do this. But what we are going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to ask a couple of questions. Now, you don't have to think about that really hard. So first, we're going to ask you, well, who are you? And as we start that, are you a program manager, administrator, an instructor, a volunteer, or another professional? So I'm going to launch the poll. You take a look, grab the one where you are, and click. And we're going to give you about 40 seconds to do this. Hopefully everybody knows who they are today.
Susan, it looks like they definitely are. We've got over 80% having voted already.
I know, we were trying to hit those numbers the last time we were here, so yay! It's still early enough in the week that everybody knows who they are. That's wonderful. And it looks to me like we have 49% sitting here as instructors. And we're so glad to have you with us, program managers. Thank you for being here with us today as we're going through. And also, we have another 21% who are other professionals. So we appreciate your taking part in the poll. We actually had 93% of you who voted on this one, so that's great. Okay, so Bonnie, is there something else we need to know?
You know, it would be nice to know at least a little more about who's with us. So let's take a look at what kind of position. You know, we all play different roles. So here's your poll. We want to know in your programs which of these best describes yours. ABE Literacy, GED Prep, ESOL, or are you a combo? So go ahead and vote for us, please.
You know, if this were a race going on, we'd actually have the combinations winning by a mile. Look at that, because we do, and we know in the state of Florida, have such a large number of programs that have a combination of people out there. But it's also good to see that we've got the ABE Literacy there. Looks like we need to pick up some ESOL here, Bonnie, as we're going
Well,
through.
I'm going to close the poll and show everyone else what you're talking about.
Oh, see, you take all the fun out of it. Here I am trying to share all this information, and now you want to show them. Okay, but anyhow, since so many of us are all visual learners, that really makes a difference as we go through. Now, we have one more question for you, and this question is going to ask you about how often you are getting into and accessing Florida IPDAY. So, check one of them: daily, weekly, monthly, or less often. Keep
And
on
we're going
voting.
to do 5 more seconds.
Keep on
5,
voting.
3, 1, and quick vote because we're going to close the poll.
Come on, we can do 90%. We just missed it. 89% of you have responded on this one. So what we have is, as you can see, we have a good, nice number of people who are making it a weekly process to get into Florida IPDAY. Some of you doing monthly, and 55% of you are less often. Well, what we're hoping is that we're going to flip some numbers around after today, because when you see all of the incredible resources that are out there just waiting for you and your program, I think you're going to find that you're going to shift into that daily, weekly. And I know one thing I look for every week as I'm out there on Florida IPDAY is I'm always looking for that tip of the week, because you never know what you're going to learn when you do that. So,
Susan, are you talking about that dollar GED Ready that's out there?
yeah, I am. That people could actually, students could take GED Ready for $1. I mean, but it's only a limited time, so only on Florida IPDAY are you going to be able to see that, hey, there's some specials coming around, but beyond that, there's also lots of tips that talk about instruction and what's going on in programs, so there are tons of things for you that's out there. So thank you for sharing your information with us as we go through. It makes a big difference for Bonnie and for me. But now what we want to do is share with you something that has been something that really Zelda and both June have been pushing for, is to put those resources to work in your program. And what are we talking about? There is an entire toolkit that is out there for career readiness. So you're going to want to be able to access that information so you can use it in your classroom. Hey, it's free, it's easily accessible, and we want to work with it from there. So Bonnie, can you tell me just a little bit about what is a toolkit anyway?
I sure can. It's one of those things that, first of all, it is a growing document. And there's a really good reason for it, and it's the fact that our adult ed world is indeed changing. And with that change comes the college and career readiness standards for adult education. They are a set of standards that we're implementing in our curriculum framework right now, and those standards do set that the expectations of what our students should be able to do, not just when they hit GED prep, but along the way an adult basic education. They're really high expectations, we understand that, but it does drive our system from states across the nation down to the districts with, you know, all the district programs and the college programs, and of course from there down to our individual schools and classrooms. And why do they matter? It's because they are the basis for our curriculum frameworks, not just adult basic ed, but they also form the basis for our GED assessment targets, and they will make the difference because, again, they tell us what we need to be teaching, not necessarily when and how, but those big ideas that all of our students need to understand, whether they're going into the workplace or whether they're going into post-secondary education. So what we're going to do today is we're going to spend some time really looking at the resources that are available for you, for your programs. And remember, as we go through this toolkit, if you have questions, please put them in because we will be looking at that question box all the time. But we also know that as we look at this, there's times that when we go through so many things, you may say to yourself, gee, I remember they talked about that, but I forgot where they said it was. And that's why we have for you today a toolkit guide. If you have already downloaded it, fantastic. Hopefully you've downloaded it and printed it. If not, then we're going to show you in just a moment where it is while we get ready to move from this PowerPoint to the Florida IPDAY site. So Susan, I'm going to click into the Florida IPDAY site. First, before we start the tour, we'll show folks where they can download this guide, and then we're going to take them on this magnificent tour of the wonderful resources in the College and Career Readiness Toolkit for Florida.
Okay, and while you're doing that, then I'm going to just answer a couple of things. Yes, we did have a little sound issue earlier on, so hopefully that's been resolved for everybody. And as far as the interactivity within this webinar, please, if you have a question, type it into the question box, and it'll pop up so that we can see and we can respond to it. As far as opening mics, that we don't do because at this point we actually have 197 attendees on this line. So that's
Susan,
why
it just went up to 203.
Well, hey, that's wonderful. So we're moving on up with all of this. So I'm really pleased with that. So just so that you're aware as you're going through, but please, please feel free to type in a question whenever you need it, and we'll be monitoring that as we go through. Okay, Bonnie, so, oh, look, Florida IPDAY. So look at all the different things that are possibly there. I mean, everything from, see, most of you, well, I would imagine all of you went through and booked this webinar through the event calendar, and it has resources. And you notice that at this point, Bonnie has highlighted the ABE button. So, Bonnie, you want to click on that and just let's see what the next thing brings. Well, you have a number of different resources that are there. Lessons, links, toolkits, videos, and webinars. And in fact, if Bonnie clicks on the webinar button, what you'll see there is that we have those archived. And if you needed the materials for today, there they are, rolling out the toolkit, and it gives you the presentation slides as well as the handout. So anytime that you say, oh, I can't find my materials that I had from that webinar, then all you have to do is go in and pull them down again, because I know sometimes our desk can get totally covered up with paper as we're moving through. So having said that, Bonnie, you want to just briefly go through and talk about kind of a rough idea of what's in that resource guide that they're using today so they can put it to use as we explore the site?
Definitely. This is the guide that was developed for today. And what you have is just a very brief overview of why we even have a CCRS toolkit. And then what we've provided you with is a step-by-step guide of how to access it. It's one thing to watch us doing it on a webinar, but if you're like me, I get home and I go, okay, which things should I click on? So we've given you a handy-dandy step-by-step guide, including the little icons that you should be clicking on. Then, if you have already downloaded this and printed this, as we take the virtual tour today, we've done just a quick little guide where, as we're going through each of these segments, if you want to take notes or you say, that's one of those segments that, yes, it's definitely something that I want to see, you'll have it. The other thing we've included, because we're going to take you through a few new resources today, is just a print view of a few of those, such as what do the lesson plans look like. More about that later as we go through. So that's where you find the resources for today's webinar. But having said that, let's go ahead, Susan, and start our virtual tour.
That sounds good, because I know there are a ton of resources that are included in there. So notice that Bottie's still under the ABE resources, and she's going to move toward the toolkit and open that. And notice that we have another link here. And once you open the link, what you find are a number of different docs, different information. So the Florida College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education are listed. You can see other information that's included as well. And notice that underneath that Florida College and Career Readiness Standards, you see the ABE Language Arts, Mathematics, and Reading. And then also you see other materials that are there as well, and that includes the GED Reasoning through Language Arts, Math, the Preparation Comprehensive, the Science and Social Studies. So here's one nice easy stop for you to come in and be able to take a look for any of the materials that you need.
Okay, Susan, before we get going, we have just a couple questions of can you show us the link again to download the guide? And the guide is, if you go under ABE and you go into webinars, you will find that guide under the webinar for today. So back to the toolkit. And just for everybody's knowledge, we know that you can find the curriculum frameworks for both ABE as well as for GED preparation on the Florida Department of Education website. These actually link to that, but what we've tried to do with the toolkit is provide you one-stop shopping, one place that you can find everything that you would need. And the same thing goes with the GED testing service assessment targets, because remember that these college and career readiness standards are aligned not only to our ABE curriculum frameworks, but also to our GED preparation program. So here again, you want to find out information on how they're aligned with the GED test. Everything you need is under the GED Testing Service Assessment Targets, right there for your use. But you know, there's been a lot of stuff out there, Susan, on college and career readiness standards for adult ed. There are so many sites that have so much material. Where in the world do I go?
Well, it just so happens that there's another button for that too. And so what we want to do, and as you're going through now, you may want to make some notes on your in your handout, but you notice that there are CCRS standards documents, and those actually go into the Adult Education Content Standards Warehouse. You can notice that we have stuff from the Office of Vocational and Adult Education. Of course, now it's OCTE, so a little bit of change in the nomenclature for it. And then the full report that's included there, that again, on college and career readiness. You know, it's one of those documents that it's important to read to get an understanding. But what we've done through the workshops and through the toolkit and others is try to break that down so you really can see, okay, how does that apply to me? What happens with me as I'm working with this? So another thing that you can see under there is standards-based education, because we know we need standards, and in fact we have our curriculum frameworks that all build up to those college and career readiness standards. Well, so how do I do that? How do I put those kinds of things together? And so there are a number of resources that are included here on standards in action and that whole process for working with standards and establishing those. But I think, Bonnie, that they want to see, so what have you actually got for ELA literacy?
You know, this year the focus has been on professional development to really talk English language arts. And so there's times you really don't want to see that whole volume of college and career readiness standards. Instead, you want the information to share with your teachers, or as a teacher, you want that specific information to review. How does it work in the ELA classroom? Knowing that English language arts incorporates not only reading, writing, and language, but also speaking and listening. So what we've done in this toolkit under this particular tab is broken apart some of the things. So when you look at areas such as ELA, all you have there are the standards for ELA, that one segment, that one chapter. Maybe you want to learn more about text complexity, which really is an important shift in the ELA standards. Again, instead of having to download that whole booklet, you can download only Appendix D, that which deals with that. But there really are a whole lot more tools out there as we get into implementing our ELA standards. Maybe you're developing some type of a lesson plan, and you've decided that you're going to create your own questions for the nonfiction text. And you say, I wonder if it's a good question. Well, if you look at the tools and resources, you'll notice that one of them is a checklist for evaluating question quality. So you may want to take a look out there and say, okay, have I really done what I want to do? And you'll notice that it is downloading from Florida IPDA. We'll see how quickly this brings it up. And what you should see on your screen is a checklist for evaluating question quality and everything you need as you're looking at, did I write an effective question or did I not? And Susan, I want to make sure, do you see this on your screen?
Sorry, I was responding to a question, but yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was trying to respond to a question.
Word document.
Yes, the work document is there.
Okay, fantastic. And you'll notice that on this Word document, it says it's a protected view, and it says you can enable editing. The reason many of the documents here on this in this toolkit are in Word, or in just a moment we'll show you a PowerPoint presentation, is so that you can use it. You can make it your own. I know oftentimes I'll download something from the web and it'll be in PDF format, and unless I retype everything, I can't make it my own. I can't say, you know, this would be a great document or a great resource, but I would like to add this, or I'd like to break it apart. So you'll notice that a number of the tools and resources in your toolkit are in this format, so you can enable editing and create things to make it your own. So as you look at some of these tools and resources, you'll notice that you have everything from text complexity text-dependent question types, and then again you've got some articles as well as some websites to go to. All tools and resources for you to get where you need to be in implementing those standards that deal with ELA. But you'll notice that there's also what we affectionately call the four-letter word in adult ed, math. And if you click on math, you'll notice that there's not a whole lot there yet. Please realize that there will be a whole lot of math resources for you next fall as we get going into implementing those math standards. So that's why I said it really is a living document. Many of us really get into research, and so in your toolkit you have probably more articles than you would ever want. But we've had a number of requests as we've gone through different webinars saying, okay, you talked about the website Achieve the Core, and it looks like there's some great stuff that I could use in my adult ed classroom. Where is it? Again, the purpose of this toolkit is to give you lots of resources, not that you may use every single one, although we hope you do, but to give you access to the wonderful world of the web, but also the wonderful world of what other people have already done for us. So as you look at this particular part of the toolkit, you'll notice everything from tools for assessment, tools for leadership and change. We know that those of us who are out there in program manager roles and lead teacher roles, that's an important part of it. We've talked about professional learning communities, and that's what we have here today, is a State of Florida PLC. But there again, it's something that you may be interested if you have not already set up your own personal professional learning community with your program. And then, of course, instructional practices, all the kinds of related readings and research, which is important. But Susan, last fall, all of us were out there doing workshops on, you know, that introduction, as well as workshops on how do I share some of this information. And of course, we know that in adult ed, the minute we think we have everybody trained, guess what? We have new people, we have changeover. So let's talk a little bit about, under that final little heading for the toolkit, what we have and why we have it.
Okay, that sounds good. And in fact, what I am going to do, we have some people who are joining us from other states. And so one of the questions that has come through is the fact of, are Florida standards nationally recognized? Keep in mind that Florida standards are built toward the college and career readiness standards. And so each state is going to want to develop standards, or their own, as we call them in Florida, they're the ABE curriculum frameworks that are correlated to those standards. So keep that in mind as you're going through. And so back to the additional handouts. So we have a number of different things. When we were doing workshops, there was a lot of information that was out there. Also, this information was shared with people who attended those workshops so they could go back and do training again. So let's just take a quick look at some of the things that are there as we're going through. And so, sorry, I'm having trouble talking here as I'm moving through. One of the things in the additional handouts, you see that there's that checklist for evaluating question quality. It's something, you know, that most of us don't think about the questions that we're doing, but it's something that's really essential. And how can you really develop the kinds of questions our students need to be answering? It's kind of interesting, but Bonnie, wasn't it something like around 50% of questions in textbooks are not text dependent?
You know, that's a pretty good percentage, and when I think about if there's that many questions there, it means it's that many articles my students don't have to read.
And that's just it. You know, all of us worry out there in the adult ed field about how do we get students to read more and to be more involved? Well, if I ask them questions that they really don't have to read the text, then why should they? So it's something that we're going to need to do. So there's actually a Word document there that you can use in creating those. Now, another thing that's incredibly important is that informational text, and that we have to get more involved with that, not just at GED level, but really at our ABE level. Rather than having just narratives and short stories that students read, they need to be reading things that have greater value to them as individuals. Maybe they can use them at home, maybe it helps them understand something at work, but we have to be able to work with that as well. And we have to look at that whole thing of text complexity. You know, our students, many times we work with them, and what we do is that we put them in something at their level. Well, that's fine when a student is doing some drill, that type of thing, but we've talked in the past about the fact our students need what we call productive struggle. They need to be able to reach for something that has a little more challenge to them. And so really understanding about text complexity can help you do that, so that, no, you don't overwhelm a student, but you let that student begin to reach for things. Now, there's some more things that are included there, and some of you maybe have been involved at your local district, local program, in doing some planning, like putting together an action plan for how to implement those standards, how to make sure that what we say we want to do is actually what's going on within the program itself. And so there was a planning document that people received as a part of the face-to-face workshops. And it really lines out, you know, okay, what are we going to do? What's our steps? How are we going to get people who don't have an opportunity to attend the workshop, how are we going to make sure they get informed? What are we going to do for timelines? Because you know as well as I do, if you don't set a timeline, it's just not going to happen. So those are the kinds of things that are there. But keep in mind, why are we doing all this? We want to make sure we're doing this for our students and for what the outcomes are going to be from there. And then we go into the workshop materials itself, and for any of you who maybe need to go back and you're thinking afterwards, wow, I could sure use some of this information, the PowerPoint is right there. So you can click on it. When you open it, what you're going to find is not just the PowerPoint slides, the pretty slide that you always see, but you're also going to see that it has notes with it. So, you know, no, it's not quite like being there, but at the same time, it gives you that background information, that backup that goes along with it. And I think Bonnie's having a little slowdown here.
I think it's a little slow.
Yeah, and that PowerPoint is awfully big. So,
but we are going to tell you, for you to download, all you have to do is you can right-click, save your target as, and you can tell it to save it to your desktop, and it will download for you very, very quickly.
But now,
again,
keep in
for
mind,
any of these documents, just right-click and save the target as, and you can save it to your desktop.
or you can save it into your document. What we'd recommend is that you set up on your computer a file that says CCRS, and keep, just like we built a toolkit here on Florida IP Day, then you're also going to want to have your own toolkit and keep adding to those resources, because we're not done yet. There's still more resources that are here in a game. That's What's My Standard. But there's also a lot more to come as we're moving forward. So keep those kind of things in mind and start to build your own resources as well.
Okay, so that's the toolkit. But you know, Susan, what I see missing is that's great information, etc. But what I want to know is, do you have some examples of how I could teach things?
Oh, sure. In fact, there are a ton of resources. And if you go back under the tab, see where Bonnie is, under Resources, go to ABE again, and notice that it says Lessons, Links, and there's even another one for videos. So let's take a look at the lessons. And in fact, in your workbook that you received, and I'm shuffling papers here, so I apologize if you've got background noise that's going on. You'll actually find, if I can remember where everything is, if there's a sample lesson plan starting on page 7. We're always talking about, oh, but I need some lessons or I need some materials. Well, there are lessons that are included for reading and for writing and for other areas as well when you go into the GED ones and look at those. But look how it's laid out. You have everything from the objectives, what you expect students to learn from this, the standards, what level we're working at, because, you know, we have all these different levels that students are at, and everybody, most of you said you had combination programs. And then there are materials. I know when I was in the classroom, I really hated it when I'd find a great lesson and then I couldn't find the book that went with it. Well, in this case, things are here. There's handouts, and also there's a place to go if you need a sample nonfiction text in this case, because there are things that you can use at different readability levels, because we're always saying, yeah, but I've got like 5 students who are at 3rd grade equivalent, I've got 6 who are at 5th grade, I've got 7 who are at 8th, what am I going to do? Well, if you go out to Newsela, you're going to find that there are a lot of different articles at different readability levels. And then it actually, the lesson plan walks you through the process itself. What are you going to need to do up front? What are you going to do as a part of the lesson itself? And Bonnie is scrolling through, and you can see that there is a step-by-step process for teaching that strategy. There are even debriefing questions. And then as you move on through, you're also going to find, okay, that's great, but I've got to do some modifications, so what am I going to do? And it gives you some ideas how you can do that and even go through and assess or extend beyond the lesson itself. That's just one example of the lessons that are there. So what we hope is that you're going to come back and you're going to take a look at each of these lessons. And if you say, but you know, I'm not teaching reading. Well, even if you're teaching math, you've got to teach reading, because we have students who really need how to have those reading skills so that they can read word problems. So, anything else, Bonnie, you want to add in the lesson plans?
I'm going to share with people that although there are now lesson plans in reading, writing, and language, there will be more added in the ELA area. And again, as of next fall, stay tuned, because there are going to also be ABE math lessons. So remember, Florida IPDA continues to grow. Just because you see this number of lesson plans doesn't mean that in 2 months from now you're not going to see multiple more. That was really a good sentence, wasn't it? A whole lot more lesson plans there for your use.
And you know, Bonnie, while you're moving around to another one there, you know, there's a couple of things from Natalie Adams. She says, I choose C, that she showed the video. It's a great tool to really understand the standards, and yes, it is underneath the toolkit itself. Another actually statement, the first step of our implementation was having instructors take the GED Ready. This did a great job of getting them to really see the move toward informational text. That's great, Lindsay. We appreciate that, because you know what? We're all in this together, whether you're working ABE all the way through to GED. we have to make sure we're all on that same page as we're moving through. I have, let's see, Dan Scott, what workbook? And again, we'll go back again, Dan, in just a few minutes, but Bonnie had gone to that, the workbook for the webinar. And then another question, and I'm going to put this question out because I'll need some guidance on this from Zelda or from June, but will there be ESOL lesson plans for math? So we need to keep that one out there and find out if we're going to have those as we move into the future.
One last thing under these particular resources, since I've gone back under the webinar, again, we're doing a virtual tour, is today it was the rolling out the toolkit for college career readiness standards. That's where you find the workbook that we were using. But the one thing I want to note is that many of you were with us a couple weeks ago when we did a follow-up to the fall training. And what I want to point out is, please, go ahead and listen to that particular webinar. But one of the things that the field asked for, they said, we need more sites that have great nonfiction text. We need a way to help teachers develop better text-dependent questions. And how in the world do we basically, unpack or break apart the prompts? And so another tool that you may want to look at as you leave this webinar is the handout that was developed for that particular webinar. Because again, just like all the webinars that Florida IPDA puts forth, there are all kinds of tools that go along with those resources. So just to give you a little hint to say, I guess we'd call it a teaser, is it important that I take a look at what's been happening? Well, maybe if you were interested in looking at more online readability calculators. Most of us don't want to spend all of the time determining the quantitative or the qualitative of text. Or, gee, I'd love to be able to develop a text-based question, but maybe I think it's too much time or it's too difficult. Well, this particular resource has identified the key ideas and details, which are those first 3 standards of the Reading Curriculum Framework standards. Again, it gives you the kinds of questions that you can use. And, of course, last but not least, all kinds of websites for both fiction and nonfiction reading. And like all the things that we like to share with people across the state, all of us as both trainers and field folks who have provided information for Florida IPDA, these things are free. We love free. So, lots of things to think about. Lots of things to see. Susan, anywhere else that we'd like to take them?
Actually, could you very quickly go over to the videos? Because I think they need to see, and we can also, you had grab and goes.
Okay. I just clicked back to the beginning page, and the reason for that is please make sure that you take a look under all of the tabs, because sometimes certain things reside in certain tabs, and it may be something that can be used across the different areas. So Susan was talking about grab and goes, and grab and goes will be added to the ABE tab, but for your knowledge base, the grab and goes that were done this past year by the field for the field are in the area of GED. So grab and goes is another place for you to go to watch your fellow adult educators share his or their information on little tips of things they've done in the classroom, along with all kinds of activities, examples, etc. Such as one of our fellow trainers, Lynn Ralston, did a thing on extended response, and I guarantee it's a hoot because she uses the emergency room as her setting for extended response. And again, you notice there you've got a short video and a handout. Want to know how to do science experiments? Again, there's a grab and go from one of our fellow educators in the field on that type of thing. So don't overlook the grab and goes that are out there, and please stay tuned because I think June Roll told me that they're going to be filming some more grab and goes within the month of February. So again, from the field, from your fellow educators, you're going to see all kinds of resources.
And in fact, speaking of June, we did ask that question about would there be the lesson plans for ESOL, and also, and yes, the answer to that is yes. There will be lesson plans coming for corrections as well. And one final note too, and June can talk a little bit more about this when she brings us back in, and we do kind of a wrap up in just a few minutes, is that they have their own YouTube channel as well. So lots of different possibilities here as we're working through. And you know, the thing is that for many of us, we were looking at what would be coming out from a lot of our vendors or a lot of our publishers. Don't forget those resources developed for the field by people who are in the field. So keep those things in mind as you're going through. So having said that, let's go back. We're going back over to the PowerPoint. No, Bonnie's not schizophrenic. She's just actually moving back to the PowerPoint itself.
I just have to figure out the right one here, okay, because I saw that we had different ones. So give me a moment and we will be there.
So as she's doing that, I'm going to click on a couple of questions that we may have out there now. Actually, one of the things that is said here too is that, Leslie, this is from Natalie Adams. It says, I show the question stems to my GED students and encourage them to construct questions using depth of knowledge level 2 and 3 to notice the difference in the types and complexities of the questions. You know, those are some of the things, Natalie, that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to go through and make sure our students recognize certain things and that they are able to reason through those things as well. So good point. And a couple of other things to keep in mind is that for all of us, we have to think of the big umbrella that's out there are the college and career readiness standards that were developed by the US DOE. And then underneath that, we're working so that we can help our students all achieve that. And how do we do that? Well, we do it through our Florida curriculum frameworks because they have done a marvelous job in being able to develop standards that are very strong, and curriculum frameworks, I should say, that are very strong and support those standards.
And Susan, you know, I think the next webinar we're really going to have a national map up because I noticed that we have a friend from Michigan here as well. And as you said, these standards are standards that all states can access. But again, as you said, we really are looking at Florida, who what they did was they integrated the college and career readiness standards out of OCTAE into their own state standards, adding some standards in technology as well as career readiness to those. So there again, as anybody from another state looks at our standards here in Florida, you are going to see the CCRS are an integral part of those standards with the addition of some things that we in Florida think are very, very important, technology and of course career pathways, that college and workplace readiness types of skills.
And there's a couple of other things. One, we have a request for the PowerPoint through email, and actually what you have is you have the slides that are there, not just the workbook, but that back in that resource where Bonnie was talking earlier. I do have one question, and Bonnie, I think we're going to need to go back and do this one more time. The question is, how can we access this site and links outside of this webinar? It's very simple. Go into your browser, and Bonnie, if you would open up one for me, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, she's asking so much. Should we start at the very beginning?
I'm asking you to go back to the home page.
Okay.
So actually what I want you to do is I just want you to go to a blank page of IE. Just give me a blank tab. Yeah, you can do it under Google Chrome. That's fine as well. It doesn't matter.
That's going to open up.
Okay, it doesn't matter which one you're going through. You can go in through AOL, you can go in through IE, you can do Safari, any of the web browsers that you have out there. And all you have to do at that point is click in floridaipday.org, and that's floridaipday.org. So Bonnie has done that. She's going to open up the page, and there it is. Everything that you want. When you leave this webinar, you can access and you can play with this to your heart's content and see all the things that are there. And in fact, we encourage you to do that. Go in and explore all of the resources, not just the ABE, but explore all of them. Because, and also you notice where I told you that you need to watch that tip of the week. There it is, sitting right down there in the corner. So, but again, all of those materials that we accessed today were under ABE. So, floridaipday.org, go to ABE, and then make your selections from there. Okay, thank you, Bonnie. Now, yeah, I'll let you be schizophrenic and you can come back over to your other one.
Okay. So, having said that, the toolkit is one thing that we wanted to focus on today because there were so many things in that toolkit that without just kind of announcing it, it would be one of those things we were worried that people would not know it was there and didn't know it would be accessible. But before we leave you today, there's a couple things that June wants to share with you that we're really excited about that are up and coming. So, June, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Yes, very well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I hope that all of you have enjoyed this virtual tool. I want to let you know and assure you that there will be upcoming events to keep all of you posted on all new things as they come about. Some of the things that we're working on is a new online learning center. So this is where you're going to be able to go in and take courses, and you can use for your recertification. You have to work with your local programs to find out how many credits or what kind of credit they give you for doing that. But stay tuned because we're really excited about the IPDAY Online Learning Center. We're going to open it up with modules that are really going to focus on the introduction to the Florida ABE standards for ELA, and then we're going to take it down to instructional strategies through the classroom, really identifying what are the teaching tools that we need to teach these shifts in ABE reading and language arts. So we're really excited to go out in the field and be able to give you that information. Also, we're going to have a administrator online course so that you can go in there as a new administrator or a veteran administrator to tap into those tools at your fingertip of the things that you need to get very quickly. The grab and goes are just a tool that you can use within your classroom, instructional teaching in PD, and just very quick little bite-sized things that will be very short and sweet with tangible handouts that you can use in the classroom. You're going to see webinars just like this rolling out with more throughout the year, more lesson plans, more practices, promising practices from the field, and much, much, much more. I will tell you that I do encourage you to look into the Florida Literacy Conference, which will be held on April 29th through May 1st. We're going to be doing a pre-conference there on April 28th, so those of you who need some brush up or you want to send your teachers or instructors to that, we will be presenting there, and that registration is now open to you. So I hope that you have found some great resources today, resources that you can use and make it your own and start to really use all these things that will continue to give us that student success that we're looking for. And last but not least, again, I just really want to thank the Florida Department of Education for their support, Zelda Rogers and Isla Waitburns and Phil Anderson for all their support in doing this. We cannot do, IPDA cannot do all of these things without the continued support of the Florida Department of Education. And last but not least, we really want you to stay connected with us. The tool that I'd like you to use is the Florida IPDA website. Just click on the contact button, and there you will be able to ask your questions, share your ideas, and mostly just stay connected within the field. And with that, I thank you very much for your time, and stay tuned. There's a lot more to come, and that's all I have.
Thank you, June. And again, for those of you in the field, remember, your IPDA trainers that worked with you this fall continue to be available to you as together. We are going and implementing college and career readiness standards across all areas, not just GED, but ABE and, of course, ESOL. So having said that, we've got just a couple minutes left for any final questions.
And, you know, we have from Lindsay, she says, always, thank you so much, ladies. You know, what I'd like to do for just a second is I would like to thank everybody for being here, that you have, the work that you do on a daily basis with our adult ed students, the things that, that you are taking on in order to make this transition a successful one. We all of us out there appreciate all that you do, and you know, keep in mind that if there's any kind of information that you need, use that contact button so that you can be in touch and find out what's going on in an area close to you, what are new things, keep up with what's going on within the IPDA site. Hopefully now we're going to have people who are visiting there at least weekly. We want that to happen a lot, so that's wonderful. And the question that was asked, is this presentation recorded? And yes, it is. It is being recorded, and it will be posted. Give it a day or so. It will be posted out on the Florida IPDA site under those webinars. Again, thank you. Thank you so much for all of you being with us. Bonnie, anything else for the good of the order?
You know, I don't think so. I think at this point in time, I noticed, I think there's only one other question, and that was whether there would be something on career clusters. And we will definitely, June can work with folks. There is some things under career pathways. So when you do look at this website, please keep checking there, because that's where the information would be. But having said that, no.
One other thing. We do have a question from Teresa Dozier Robinson. Is this free? And yes, all those resources that were on the website, everything is, as Bonnie likes to put it, free, free, free. In fact, free, and encouraging you to be able to access those materials.
Because we'll end today with the Edutopia quote. The best professional development is ongoing, experiential, collaborative, and connected to and derived from working with students. Stay tuned to Florida IP Day because it definitely is ongoing, and we hope that we all together can experience and collaborate together so that we connect everything so that the most important person out there is the winner, and that is our students. So, having said that, Susan, thanks for being with me. June, thanks for being with me. And thank you, each and every one of you, for being with us. And we'll see you next time on Webinar Wednesday.
Thank you.